guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a makeup declutter. I recently posted a makeup inventory for like the quarter, basically a September update, 3/4 of the way through the year, and the results weren't good. I was hoping to have a slightly more curated collection in September than I did at the beginning of the year in January, and instead it appeared we were moving the other direction. So after filming that video, I went through my makeup collection and really just tried to be honest with myself about things that if I pull them into a Shop My Stash, I'm like, do I feel like I don't really feel like using this, I'd rather use something else, but I feel obligated to pull it into my Shop My Stash so I can get use out of it. I just really try to be honest with myself about things that I'm excited to reach for and things that I really don't, like I could do without my collection. So I have a basket full of makeup with some eyeshadow palettes included. I recently decluttered 10 eyeshadow palettes from my collection. I will also leave that video linked in case you're interested in seeing that. But I've decided to declutter a few more eyeshadow palettes as well. So if you guys are interested in seeing the products throughout my makeup collection that I will be getting rid of, then stay tuned. But first, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll consider doing so before you go. I post videos every single Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And without further ado, let's get into it. I always want my ponytail to look like a Victoria's Secret model, like just like a sleek, nice ponytail, and I feel like it's like a blobby, frizzy old mess always. Like I feel like it's almost like an expectation versus reality, but I always think I look like the expectation, and then I go to edit my videos and it's just like, girl, what are you doing with that ponytail? So, but at the same time, I just really can't be bothered to do much with my hair. I mean, I have such long hair and I never do anything with it. Really sad. But once again, this has nothing to do with the actual video. So like I said in the introduction, I have this basket full of makeup. I'm gonna try and be as organized as possible, but as we get towards the bottom, I don't know if there's gonna be much organization at all. We're gonna start with face palettes. Again, not really we're not gonna be going in any particular order, but what I will tell you guys is for primer, concealer, and foundation, there was really nothing throughout my collection that I wanted to get rid of. There was the Cover FX Power Play foundation that I considered decluttering, but I don't mind the way that that looks like on camera, so I figured I would try and reach for that foundation on filming days. I wore that to work a couple of times this week, and there was a couple days where like I felt it was okay, and then there were other days where I was like, oh, this just looks so heavy. But that was the only foundation that I thought like I could maybe declutter. Ooh, my tongue's red. I'm drinking fruit punch water as a total side note, but that's why my tongue is like bright red. Anyway, you guys, so there was no foundation, concealer, or primer that I really thought that I could declutter, but let's talk about these two face palettes. So up first, I have this one from Naked Cosmetics. So this I have kept throughout many declutters, and the reason being is just because I really do, for some reason, I'm just like really drawn to like holographic makeup, but not to actually use on myself. I think it's because I really started getting into YouTube and getting into makeup when the holographic trend really started to come into the makeup realm. One of the first highlighters I ever purchased was Becca Prismatic Amethyst. So for some reason, I just have not been able to declutter this, but I never reached for this. And I have the Kat Von D Alchemist palette. I purchased this well before there was tons of controversy surrounding Kat Von D, and I absolutely love that palette for inner corner highlight. I thought I could use this palette for, I don't know, sometimes I just feel like this reminds me of the Alchemist palette a little bit, except for this has 2 more colors. But this is just a really powdery formula, and it's just not one I ever feel excited to reach for or want to reach for. So I think it's finally time to declutter this. And then this is another one I was going back and forth on. This is from Wander Beauty. It's their Wanderous Dusk to Dawn palette. And I do like this palette. It's a blush and highlighter palette. But number one, the pan sizes are so skinny that I feel like it's a little bit difficult to disperse or to dispense onto my brush. And the highlight in here is just a little bit too dark for me. Normally, there it is right there. It's very golden. It's a very beautiful highlight, but it's typically a little bit too dark for me. This Havana Nights blush is really, really pretty again, but it is just a little bit more berry toned than I prefer for a blush, even when I sheer it out. This Tuscan Sunrise shade is really the only shade that I reach for within this palette. And even so, like, I just don't really get that excited to reach for this. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this swatch. My hand was already dirty before I started filming this. Anyway, this is one of those palettes where the times that I pulled it into a Shop My Stash, I just pull it in because I feel obligated, because I feel like I need to rotate this into my like makeup rotation. It's not something that I am excited to reach for, so for that reason I am going to be decluttering this. Okay, I have 6 more eyeshadow palettes that I am going to be decluttering. So up first, I am finally going to get rid of my Huda Amethyst Obsessions palette. I've mentioned this many times on my channel, but the gemstone line was underwhelming to me compared to the original 6 Huda Obsessions palettes. Now she is coming out with there's 3 new ones she's coming out with, and I want all 3. And that is what sparked me to be like, okay, you need to get rid of some more eyeshadow palettes before you go bringing in any more eyeshadow into your collection. So this I never reach for. I give this to my daughter more often than not to play with than me actually reaching into it. It looks like it's like very used, but that's because this is like my go-to. Like, my daughter always wants my purple palette. She loves purple, and I give this to her. And that tells me right there that, like, if I'm trusting my 4-year-old who ruins all of my makeup to play with this, then I don't really care that much about it. I don't care if she ruins it, etc. The only shade that I really love in this palette is this one right here, which is this really pretty multi-dimensional like pinky purple shade, and it actually is super similar to one of the shades in the gemstone, the actual like original gemstone palette that Huda came out with. So I figured if that's the only reason I'm keeping this palette around, let's get rid of it. Okay, well, if I wasn't getting rid of it before, I will now. Oh, okay, hold on. Okay, so that was my Pure Visionary palette that I just dropped, and I'm shocked to say that none of these shades in this palette broke. And what I found from dropping it is that you can just pop out. Oh, I'm fearful I'm gonna break something. You can just pop out the pans on this. So if there's anything within this palette that I really want, which I never reach for this palette, so there probably isn't, but I could just pop out a couple of shades to keep in a Z palette. I have a Z palette right now that like isn't even full, but I was so excited to purchase this palette, which is why I feel like I've kept this around for so long. But the texture and formula of these is so interesting. It's more of like a satin sort of finish on each. Like, even the mattes aren't really matte. Like, it's just, they're very interesting in texture. Now the foiled shades are like very foiled. There's one of them, I hope that you can see. But I'm just never inclined to reach for this. I feel like if I'm reaching for this, it's just for one shade to top my lid. It's never that I'm reaching into this to create a full look. So this is another one that I've considered decluttering many times, and I kind of looked throughout my palette collection, and if it was a palette that I've considered decluttering in the past, I just told myself, you know what, just get rid of it and don't even think about it. Like, there's so many new palettes coming out all of the time that you were so interested in. You don't have enough time to use the collection that you currently have. Like, let's get rid of some stuff. So this is one of those things we're just gonna say goodbye to and not even think about it. I never think about this palette ever until it comes to decluttering time, and I'm like, oh no, like, there'll be some day that I really want to use that. Like, my husband's probably gonna ask me to go get him a Big Mac some night during Thursday night football, and I will really want to reach for that palette. That's my fear. Both of my Violet Voss palettes, I feel like this is going to be a super unpopular like opinion, because I know a lot of people do really like the Violet Voss eyeshadow palettes, but I just never feel like reaching for these. And honestly, like, the few times that I have, I've been slightly underwhelmed with the looks that I have been able to create. So first up, we have this one right here, which is the Like a Boss palette. This is what it looks like. It's super pretty, but honestly, the shimmers within the Violet Voss palettes are just incredibly underwhelming to me. I feel like they're a little bit chunky. They fade off the eyes very quickly, and I just don't love the formula. So that is why I've decided to declutter both of these. The other one that I have is the Holy Grail palette, which again, I love the color story of this, but if I'm wanting an eyeshadow look with like red tones or like a super warm eyeshadow look, I can just reach into my Modern Renaissance, my Sassy Siennas palette, my Baked Berries, Blush and Berries palette by Dose of Colors. I have so many other warm tone palettes that I can reach into that I just don't need to keep this one around. This is one of the last palettes in my collection that I think to reach for if I'm wanting a warm tone look. So that just tells me that I really don't need to keep this around. This was a tough decision, and honestly, I do really like this palette, but one, it's just like a larger palette, and two, I just feel like I have these eyeshadow shades throughout my collection, and I would rather keep them in the other palettes that I have over keeping this big bulky palette. Again, I have nothing bad to say about this palette. I know that you can't really get your hands on this palette anymore, but for me, I just don't reach into this enough to justify keeping it. This is another one I've considered decluttering multiple times, and when I reach into this palette, it's typically to create like a mauve toned eyeshadow look, and if I want to do that, I can also reach into my Huda Mauve Obsessions, my Tarte Unleashed palette, my Tarte Love, Trust, and Fairy Dust, my Queen of Hearts palette. Like, there's so many other palettes I can reach into that I really want to keep in my collection that I just feel like I don't need this anymore. There are a few more eyeshadow palettes that were hiding at the bottom that I forgot I'm also decluttering. I'm going to declutter this one from Viseart. I've only ever swatched this with my finger. I've never even used this on my eyes. I got this in my Beautylish Lucky Bag. This is the Viseart, I think it's the 4. I don't know how to read Roman numerals, you guys, but the Amethyst palette. And in the past, I just haven't been a huge fan of the Viseart eyeshadow formula in general. I know it's kind of either like a love-hate type of thing. I could also pop these out if I really wanted to keep the shades, and then I could just like declutter this palette. But again, I just never reach for this. I literally haven't reached for this since I got it. Haven't even used it once. So that tells me I don't need it. I'm also going to be decluttering my e.l.f. Mad for Mattes palette. I did hit pan on the one shade in this palette right here that I really do love. Someone commented this in one of my videos and said that they feel like this palette, unless you're using like super monochromatic like shades, is pretty muddy or muddies up, and I do agree with that. It's just I do feel like this can muddy up pretty quickly, and I typically only ever reach into this if I'm going in with one eyeshadow, so I just feel like I don't need this one anymore, and it's gonna go goodbye. And then this is the toughest decision of them all, but I am gonna get rid of my Marc Jacobs Holiday 2017 palette. So this is what this one looks like. It's a really beautiful palette, but what I don't love about this is, first of all, you're left with only a few matte shade options, and I found that the matte shades tend to muddy up within this palette as well. And even though I do like some of the shimmer shades in this, I'm never reaching in for this just for a shimmer shade. So I just feel like I don't need this anymore. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say goodbye. Ugh. There are still just a few shades in here, like this blue purple shade I really love. I feel like I'm suddenly talking myself into keeping this. There's like this beautiful green foiled shade. Ugh. I should just not have even opened this. I'm gonna use this a few more times and possibly not declutter it. We're gonna think a little bit more on this one. This one I might be decluttering. We'll see. God darn it. But everything else I am truly decluttering. Okay, I have a few eyeliners and brow products to tell you guys about. So I just have way too many eyeliners. I have way too many black eyeliners still. I should declutter more, and way too many liquid liners when I'm never really reaching for a liquid liner. So I just decided to get rid of a few. First, I'm getting rid of this liquid liner from Architect. I'm sure I got this in some sort of subscription box. It's just not even like the blackest of black. So if I'm ever reaching for a liquid liner, which I'm not, I don't want to reach for a dull one. So we're gonna get rid of that. I'm also getting rid of this Hikari like crayon. This one is super black, but I also am never really reaching for a black eyeliner, especially like a black crayon. I really only need like one black liner and maybe one black liquid liner in my collection because I reach for them so infrequently. I like to use a dark brown in my waterline. I just find it to be a little less harsh. So I'm gonna get rid of that. And then two brow products I'm getting rid of. I'm getting rid of the IT Cosmetics brow powder. I'm sure I got this in a subscription box. I've gotten multiples of these in subscription boxes, and it's just not my favorite formula. And then from Peak Performance Brow from Pop Beauty, Peak Performance Brow. This is already like broken kind of, and it's just like a super waxy brow pencil. And I just never even reach, I just always go for my ABH Brow Powder Duo. You guys know that if you watch my channel at all. So these are 4 liners that I am getting rid of. Oh wait. I also have this little Tarte Sex Kitten liner. This is just a black liner as well. It's fine, but again, I just don't need a ton of black liners. So getting rid of that. Okay, I'm gonna go through blushes next. So I am actually gonna get rid of both of my Milani like Rose collection blushes. And the reason being is I swatched like all of the blushes in my collection against other blushes throughout my collection that looked to be the same in tone. And I tried to get rid of anything, like I tried to only keep one of shades that truly looked almost the exact same. I can't remember which one the Blossom Time Rose looked like. I truly cannot remember which one it did, but it was almost an exact shade dupe. And for me, the Rose blushes by Milani, I like them, but they're a little bit powdery. Like, I don't know if you'll even be able to see, like even the top right now, it just looks a little bit powdery, which I don't love in my blushes. When my blush collection was much smaller, I definitely liked these a lot more in the past, but past is the past. So and then this one, the Milani Coral Cove blush, I found to be similar enough to the Buxom blush in Mykonos. I never know how to pronounce anything. Again, just such a powdery formula. And I don't need multiple blushes that are like this bright coral. So getting rid of this. And then I also am getting rid of this NYX Ombre blush in the shade Strictly Chic, which is another orangey coral blush. And I just felt like, so this one is definitely more orangey than the coral one, which has a little bit more of like a pink finish to it. But this one looks really, really similar to my Ciate London Summer Love blush, which I love that blush. That blush has a little bit of a sheen to it too. And I just felt like I didn't need 2 blushes that were like this bright orangey coral. So I'm going to be getting rid of this one. And then this was going in my Shop My Stash, and I used to love this blush, but I used to feel like it was more pigmented than I do now. So this is in the shade of Plum Rose, and I know a common complaint about the Physicians Formula blushes is that they just aren't that pigmented. For some reason, again, in the past when I used this blush, I remember it being like pigmented, and I was like, oh, like this works on my skin tone. But as I have had this in my Shop My Stash the last couple of weeks, it just has not looked like anything on my skin. Oh, it does smell so good though. So I am going to be getting rid of this. And then the last blush that I'm going to get rid of, this was a tough decision as well. This is my Becca Luminous Blush in the shade Snapdragon. And this one for me is, so it looks pretty similar to Becca Flower Child when swatched. This one is a little bit brighter. I don't have Flower Child swatched in my hand, obviously. And I typically like a more muted blush. I don't like anything that's too in your face. Like even my Buxom blush that looks like this one, I really like to sheer out just because I don't like a really pigmented blush. So I am going to be getting rid of this blush from Becca. I remember I used to have like 6 or 7 of the Becca blushes, and now I'm down to 3. I have Songbird, Flower Child, and Wild Honey, and I can't imagine my collection being without those. But it is time to say goodbye to Snapdragon. Oh, you guys, I did want to mention, so this is one primer that I am getting rid of. This I had talked to you guys about in a previous Shop My Stash that I was decluttering, but if you don't follow my Shop My Stash series, I just wanted to quickly mention this. This is the NYX Honey Do Me Up primer. This wasn't counted in my makeup inventory because I had already decided that I was going to be decluttering it, but just wanted to mention this to you guys. I used to also really like this primer, but now I just find it sticky, and I don't want to use the word slimy, but it's just not my favorite texture. And I've really started to hone in on the primer category. And I just feel like I'm really starting to understand what I'm looking for in a primer. Like, you know, like I'm maturing. I really know what I want from my primers. And it's just not the NYX Honey Do Me Up anymore. So I just wanted to mention that. And then while we're at it, again, I guess we're getting rid of that if we weren't before. Okay, again, while we're at it, 2 other products I mentioned in previous Shop My Stashes that I'm decluttering that I didn't count in my makeup inventory but wanted to mention. So again, these weren't counted in my makeup inventory, but I wanted to mention them to you guys. Again, if you don't follow my Shop My Stash series, first from number 7, I have this bronzer in Golden Sand. And I used to, again, really love this bronzer, but I put this on for work the other day. Not the other day, this was weeks ago now. But I had put this on and I just did not love the shade. It was almost too warm toned for me, which I don't remember ever feeling like this was too warm tone, but I just did not like the tone of the bronzer on me. Maybe it was the foundation that I was using, but I just decided right then and there I was just going to be done with the bronzer. I have way too many bronzers in my collection. I'm not going to miss this. I can get rid of it, so get rid of it I did. And then this Essence Sun Club Matte Bronzing Powder in the shade 1 Natural. This had been going in like 3 or 4 rounds of my Shop My Stash and I never reached for it, so that told me that I wasn't excited about it. I wasn't using it because I wanted to use it. I was using it because I felt obligated. So instead of using it, I just decided time to declutter. The reason I still have some of these products too, by the way, you guys, is because I like to give my sister the opportunity to peruse my makeup collection before I get rid of stuff in case she wants anything. Otherwise, I'll like offer it to my friends, list it on Poshmark, give it to my daughter so that hopefully she won't ruin the makeup that I like. But yeah, just wanted to briefly mention that. 2 more bronzers that I'm getting rid of. Okay, this was a tough one. So this is the Marc Jacobs bronzer in the shade Tantric. And I purchased this a couple of years ago when Tantastic had released. Everyone was raving about it, but you couldn't buy it anywhere. And it was limited edition at that time. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna buy this because I just wanna experience that luxurious moment with a Marc Jacobs bronzer. So I purchased this and I actually got a ton of good use out of this. And then Tantastic came along and I've kept both of them for a really long time because they are 2 different shades. And honestly, just like, this is such a luxurious piece that I love the compact. I do love everything about this. But when it comes to shade, I'm honestly always reaching for Tantastic over this. So I just don't need both in my collection. Therefore, I finally am gonna get rid of this. And then this one is one I've considered decluttering many times in the past as well. This is ABH Tawny, and when this first released, I really liked it, but I've tried so many bronzers within the past year and a half that I've really started to kind of learn what I really like in bronzer tone, etc. And first and foremost, this is a little too dark for me unless I'm at like my tannest, unless I've like doused myself in tanning bronzing mousse like two days in a row. And it's also pretty red toned, which I don't mind in the summertime, but outside of the summer, I just don't prefer a super red toned bronzer. So for that reason, I really can only use this bronzer in the summer, and I only reached for it a handful of times this past summer. Therefore, it's time to just let this go and reach for other bronzers in my collection that I prefer over this. I feel like I'm not gonna miss this. It wasn't something that I ever was like, ooh, I really wanna reach for my ABH bronzer. So this one is going bye-bye. And then I just have a few highlights to talk about and we will wrap it up. So highlighters, you guys. Whew. It's not like I'm getting rid of drugstore highlights here. So first, let's talk about my 2 liquid highlights that I'm gonna get rid of. I never thought this day would come that I would get rid of Cover FX Custom Enhancer Drops. This is in the shade Moonlight. I am currently trying to pan my Sunlight ones in my 19 and 2019 Project Pan. These used to be favorites of mine, but I just do not like liquid highlights anymore. The closest I'll get to a liquid is a cream, which I know isn't a liquid. I do like my Milk lipstick, but other than that, I just prefer a powder highlight. And I'm literally never reaching for these. I'm not even reaching for the ones that I'm panning, let alone these. So it's time for me to just let this go, say goodbye. And then I also have this little mini guy from Algenis. These are the concentrated luminizing drops. Again, I just don't like liquid highlights, so I'm not reaching for these. I'm also finally getting rid of my Cover FX powder highlight in the shade Moonlight. This, I was expecting something completely different than what I got out of this, and this is just a little bit too subtle and a little bit too silver toned for my taste. I've kept this through many declutters, but considered decluttering it, and I'm never reaching for this. I can't even tell you the last time I truly reached for this, and I don't get excited to use it. It's just not something that I'm wanting to reach for, so that tells me I don't need it in my collection anymore. So we're gonna get rid of that. All right, I'm also getting rid of this one from Hourglass, and there was a time where this was my favorite formula within my collection. This is an incandescent strobe, and I'm still keeping one of my Hourglass highlights. It's more champagne toned. So again, this is incandescent strobe, and this is just a little bit too pinky, too silvery for my personal preference, and I just don't love the way that this one specifically looks on my cheeks. I do still like my other one, I can't remember the name of it, but again, it's a little bit more champagne toned, and I'm keeping that one, but getting rid of this one. If I'm reaching for the Hourglass formula, I'm reaching for the other shade over this. So it is time to say goodbye to that. And then my final two that I'm getting rid of two more Becca highlights. The only Becca highlighter in a full size, at least, that I will still have in my collection is Prismatic Amethyst, and I really just keep that around for nostalgic reasons. I mean, I just don't think I could ever get rid of that highlight. So this is Lilac Geode. This is what this one looks like, and when this released, I was in that phase where I would pretty much buy anything Becca because I just loved Becca as a brand. I still do, but like, it was like me and Becca at that time. So this is Lilac Geode. My hand is so dirty, I really should wash it off. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but this honestly is more of a blush topper than an actual highlight. And I still have my MAC Fairly Precious, I think is the name of it, like blush topper that I can use if I want an actual blush topper. This also reminds me of the Flower Beauty blush in Warm Hibiscus, I think it is. But this one obviously is like more of like highlighty. That one's more of a blush with a glow. But I maybe reached for this once this year, and it's just not a shade that I feel like works well for my skin tone. So for that reason, I'm gonna be getting rid of this. And then, you guys, I'm gonna do it. I'm getting rid of Champagne Pop. I just don't really reach for this highlight that often, and I swatched this. So obviously this is a super golden highlight. There it is, swatched right there. So sometimes this is too dark for me, especially when I'm at my fairest. And I swatched this next to quite a few other highlighters within my collection, and I felt like it looked close enough to other champagne highlighters within my collection that I liked, that I just don't feel the need to keep this anymore. And I'm really shocked to hear myself say that. Jaclyn Hill was one of the first YouTubers that I ever watched, got into, etc. I can remember specifically purchasing this highlight, but I just don't feel the need to have it in my collection anymore. I feel like throughout the years, I've probably used this highlighter under 15 to 20 times. Like, I don't reach for it that frequently, and again, I have other champagne tone highlights in my collection that I'm reaching for so much more often than I am this, that it's just time to say goodbye to Champagne Pop. Whew, okay, I am out of breath. I've been talking so long, my tongue isn't red anymore, but now I need some water. Okay, after that, you guys, oh, there it is again. There it is. Sorry if it like grosses you out that I just showed you my tongue. Anyway, after that, you guys, that concludes today's declutter. I know I personally am feeling a lot better about this. I know my makeup collection is still like out of control, but I feel good that I like sat down and made myself get rid of some stuff. Like, I'm sure I could have gotten rid of more, but I am proud of myself for getting rid of. Sometimes it's really hard for me to get rid of products that I know I spent lots of money on. So like the Becca, the Hourglass, if I end up getting rid of the Marc Jacobs palette, those items, those are exceptionally hard just because I know how much money I spent on them. So that concludes today's declutter. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch this video. If you have recently decluttered any products in your makeup collection, leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys. Other than that, I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Bye.